Remember to appreciate this tale, share your reflections below, and follow along for more heartfelt narratives. The garden lanterns flickered softly, echoing the gentle haze settling behind my temples. Margaret always hosted the most wonderful summer soirées, string lights woven through ancient oak trees, the aroma of barbecued salmon blending with lavender, joy rippling outward from groups of people dotting her expansive yard. I had anticipated this evening eagerly, craving a return to normalcy, yearning to feel less like the woman whose existence had recently veered sharply from its woe-worn path. David's departure the previous autumn had created a void in our home that remained thunderous on most afternoons. Visiting Margaret's felt like re-entering the world of sound, even temporarily. I had sipped several glasses of Ross, conversed with familiar companions, smiled until my face ached, but as night deepened, the cheerful commotion began resembling interference buzzing against my solitary musings. The gathering was winding down, guests departing, time approaching for my return to the hushed house. My intention had been straightforward: drive myself, enjoy a moderate amount of wine over many hours, and depart before late evening. Yet existence, as it frequently does, had different plans. My automobile, typically dependable Claire, had chosen this particular night for rebellion, a choking refusal to ignite followed by ominous quiet beneath the hood when I attempted departure. Earlier, Margaret, ever the unflappable hostess, dismissed my embarrassment with a wave. "Don't fret, Emma. We'll arrange your transportation. Peter can drive you." Peter? I searched the remaining attendees, unable to immediately identify him. Margaret gestured toward a gentleman standing beside the terrace edge, gazing into the shadowed garden. "My cousin Peter. He arrived recently after working late and needs to head toward your area anyway." I recalled Margaret mentioning her relative, the reserved one who operated some specialized literary shop in the city center. We had never been introduced. He pivoted as Margaret called out, and my initial observation was tranquility. He appeared, anchored in place, unlike the restless, social energy surrounding us. Likely near my age, perhaps approaching 60, with cropped, tidy salt and pepper hair and gentle eyes framed by modest spectacles. A calmness emanated from him. He wore a plain collared shirt with sleeves folded back, appearing slightly displaced, as though he had arrived directly from a more serene, contemplative realm. "Peter, meet my dear friend Emma," Margaret announced cheerfully, threading her arm through mine. "Emma's vehicle decided to be troublesome. Would you be wonderful and ensure she reaches home safely? She resides near Maple Grove," Peter offered. A small, courteous smile. "Certainly. No difficulty whatsoever. Ready whenever you are, Emma." His voice carried more depth than anticipated, smooth and measured, without fuss or hesitation, simply calm acceptance. I collected my belongings and shawl, bid Margaret farewell with promises to discuss the car situation tomorrow, then followed Peter toward the street. His vehicle wasn't ostentatious, a dark, well-maintained sedan appearing comfortable and reliable, much like its owner. He opened the passenger door, a gesture feeling almost charmingly old-fashioned in our modern era. Settling into the seat, I detected the subtle, pleasant scent of aged books and perhaps leather. It wasn't the typical automotive smell of artificial freshener. It was intriguing, comforting. "Comfortable?" he inquired, starting the engine to a low, unobtrusive purr. "Yes, thank you," I replied, suddenly feeling somewhat awkward. Casual conversation wasn't always my strength, particularly with strangers. What does one say to a friend's cousin who has unexpectedly become your driver? "Thank you again for this. I truly appreciate it. Honestly, it's no inconvenience." "Margaret's correct. I'm traveling in that general direction regardless." He pulled from the curb smoothly, streetlights washing across his profile. He seemed concentrated on the road, hands resting easily on the wheel. The quiet extended for several blocks, filled only by the engine's soft hum and distant cricket songs. Strangely, it wasn't uncomfortable silence, it felt peaceful. Perhaps the wine was subsiding, or perhaps it was simply the contrast to the party's clamor, but the stillness felt welcoming. He navigated the familiar streets leading from Margaret's neighborhood with effortless confidence. "So," he began, his voice remaining quiet but friendly, "Margaret mentions you're an artist." I was surprised Margaret had shared that detail. It sometimes felt like a former existence. "I dabble," I admitted. "More recreational these days. Previously, I was more dedicated to it." "What subjects do you paint?" He glanced over briefly, his eyes showing genuine interest, primarily landscapes, I found myself explaining. Attempting to capture illumination, you understand the way it transforms everything. I believe I understand, he murmured, turning onto the main thoroughfare leading toward my neighborhood. Light alters everything. The way he spoke it simple and direct resonated somehow. It wasn't merely polite conversation. It felt like genuine comprehension. The streetlights grew sparser as we departed the denser suburban area. The road ahead darkened, illuminated mainly by the car's beams carving through the night. Air drifting through slightly opened windows carried scents of moist earth and jasmine. This unexpected journey home already felt different than I could have imagined. Our conversation began flowing more naturally afterward. He inquired about my painting, not just courteous questions but thoughtful ones about inspiration, about the sensation of becoming lost in the work. I found myself describing the frustration of attempting to capture a particular sunset hue, the small triumph of finally achieving it correctly. Talking with him felt surprisingly effortless. He listened attentively, nodding occasionally, his sporadic comments demonstrating he wasn't merely hearing but truly understanding. He discussed his bookshop, not just the commercial aspects but the satisfaction of connecting someone with literature they end up cherishing, the quiet enchantment of a space filled with stories awaiting discovery. He described the aroma of aging paper and bindings with reverence I understood, mirroring my own feelings about turpentine and linseed oil scents. We discussed beloved books, discovering shared affection for certain authors whose words felt like homecoming. We found mutual distaste for excessively crowded spaces and fondness for rainy afternoons. Nothing dramatic occurred, no sudden revelations or startling confessions. It was simpler, the gentle unfolding of personalities finding unexpected connection points in a shared car ride's quiet intimacy. The subtle tension I experienced wasn't romantic exactly, but awareness of being truly seen, perhaps for the first time recently. He didn't probe my personal circumstances, didn't ask about David or why I seemed somewhat fragile around the edges. I didn't inquire about his life either. It sufficed to discuss art and literature and how the world appeared as we traveled. The houses grew more distant, replaced by stretches of dark fields and trees silhouetted against the moonlit sky. The world beyond the windows felt vast and quiet, mirroring the peaceful space that had opened between us inside the vehicle. He drove comfortably, never too quickly, never too slowly. It felt secure. There's a location just ahead, he said after a comfortable conversational pause. A scenic viewpoint. The valley vista is quite remarkable at night, especially with the moon nearly full. He glanced over. Would you mind? It adds perhaps 15 minutes, but it's worth seeing if you haven't experienced it before. I hesitated. Only momentarily. My house, my quiet empty house, could wait. I don't mind at all, I heard myself saying. I'd like that. He turned off the main road onto a narrower, winding lane climbing gently upward. The trees grew denser here, their branches occasionally brushing the car roof. It felt like we were heading somewhere secret. He parked in a small unpaved clearing at the rise's summit, switching off the engine. The sudden silence was profound, broken only by night insects chirping and pine needle whispers in the breeze. He didn't immediately extinguish the headlights, their beams cutting through darkness, illuminating a low stone barrier at the clearing's edge. Beyond it, nothing but darkness. We should step out, he suggested quietly. The lights diminish. The view. He extinguished the headlights and the world outside plunged into soft silvery darkness lit only by the high bright moon and countless distant stars. He came around and opened my door again. Stepping out, the night air felt cool against my skin. The pine scent was intense here, clean and sharp. We walked the few steps to the low stone wall, and the view stole my breath. Below us, the valley stretched out a vast tapestry of slumbering houses, scattered lights twinkling like fallen stars. Moonlight bathed the distant hills in ethereal luminescence, softening their contours, making the familiar landscape seem magical, mysterious. We stood there momentarily, side by side, not touching, just observing. The sheer magnitude, the quiet majesty, made our earlier conversation, the party, even my own worries feel very small and distant. Magnificent, I breathed. You were right. This is incredible, isn't it? His voice was soft beside me. Puts things in perspective. We leaned against the cool stone wall. The silence returned, but this time it felt different. It wasn't merely an absence of noise, it was full, charged with the night's beauty and the unspoken connection that had grown between us during the drive. It felt like we were the only conscious beings in the world. Sometimes, he began, his voice barely above a whisper, still gazing at the valley. Life feels like you're simply navigating through poorly lit streets, you know? Following the familiar route because it's what you know. You forget to look up or pause and see the broader picture. I knew exactly what he meant. That's how I'd felt for months head down, just surviving the days, the weeks. You become lost. In the details, I agreed, my own voice hushed. The obstacles, the traffic signals. You forget there's an entire landscape out there. He turned his head slightly, looking at me. Moonlight caught his glasses lenses, but I could sense his gazes. Intensity. Exactly. And sometimes you just need someone to suggest an alternative route. His words lingered in the cool night air. It wasn't a proposition, not in the usual sense. It felt deeper. It was acknowledgement of the rut I was in, perhaps the rut he understood too. It was an invitation to perceive things differently, prompted by this shared, unexpected moment. My heart was beating slightly faster, not with alarm but with a strange mixture of vulnerability and possibility. It was the kind of intimate moment that rarely occurs in life, where defenses drop and you connect with another person on a level bypassing small talk and pretense. He wasn't trying to impress me or win me over. He was just being present, and in doing so, he was allowing me to be present too, perhaps more fully than I had been in a very long time. My wife, Catherine, he said quietly, surprising me. He hadn't mentioned a wife. She passed away 4 years ago. Illness. She loved views like this. We used to visit here sometimes. The revelation wasn't sorrowful, the way he expressed it. It was just a fact shared softly in the darkness, a piece of his landscape offered gently. I'm so sorry, Peter, I murmured, and I truly was. It's all right, he said, returning to the view. Mostly. Some days are louder than others, you understand. I did understand. Oh, how I knew about the loud days. Yes, I whispered. The silence can be the loudest sound of all. He nodded slowly, a shared understanding passing between us without needing further words. We stood there longer, enveloped by the vast, quiet beauty of the night and the fragile, unexpected intimacy of shared grief and understanding. It wasn't about romance. It was about humanity, about seeing the map of loss in another person's eyes and recognizing the landmarks. The unexpected thing wasn't a kiss or confession of attraction. It was this profound quiet moment of seeing and being seen, of shared vulnerability under a star canopy. It felt like a quiet clearing in the dense forest of my own solitude. The drive back down the winding lane and onto the main road toward my house was different. The earlier easy conversation was replaced by comfortable, thoughtful silence. The air in the car felt charged, but not with awkwardness. It was the quiet energy that follows genuine connection, like air after a summer storm, cleansed, calm, and carrying the faint scent of renewal. Peter seemed content with the silence too, his hands steady on the wheel, his gaze focused ahead, but seemingly more relaxed than before. I watched familiar landmarks approach: the old bridge by the stream, the sharp curve at Maple Road, but they looked different tonight, tinged with the silver of moonlight we'd shared at the overlook, colored by the quiet understanding that had passed between us. When he stopped in front of my house, he cut the engine, plunging us back into neighborhood quiet, broken only by a distant air conditioner's low hum. My porch light cast a warm, welcoming glow, but tonight the house didn't seem quite so empty. Something had shifted within me. Well, he said softly, turning slightly in his seat, here you are. Thank you, Peter, I said, meeting his gaze. His eyes behind the glasses looked kind, steady. Really, thank you for the ride and for the detour. A small smile touched his lips. You're welcome, Emma. It was nice. Nice, such a simple word. Yet it felt inadequate for the connection's depth I felt, but also somehow perfectly right. It wasn't dramatic or life-altering in a loud way, but it was significant. He didn't move to exit, didn't linger awkwardly. He just waited, respecting my space. I gathered my belongings, my hand resting on the door handle. About my car, I began. Don't worry about it tonight, he interrupted gently. Get some rest. Margaret and I can help you sort it out tomorrow. Okay, I agreed. Thank you. I opened the door, stepping out into my own street's familiar air. I paused, looking back at him. Good night, Peter. Good night, Emma, he replied, his voice calm and warm in the darkness. I closed the door softly and watched as he waited for me to reach my front door before pulling away smoothly, his taillights disappearing around the corner. Inside, the house's silence greeted me, but it didn't feel oppressive tonight. It felt contemplative. I walked through the familiar rooms, the evening's events replaying in my mind, Margaret's party, the initial awkwardness, the surprise of my dead battery, and then Peter, the quiet conversation in the car, the shared appreciation for simple things, the unexpected stop at the overlook, the starlit view, and that moment of profound shared understanding. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, nothing like the stories you sometimes hear. It was quieter, subtler, but no less powerful for it. It was the simple, unexpected gift of human connection, of feeling seen and understood. At a time when I felt largely invisible even to myself, standing in my dimly lit living room, I looked out the window into the night. I didn't feel giddy or swept off my feet. Instead, I felt a quiet sense of expansion, like a door had been gently pushed open in a room I hadn't even realized was closed. The drive home with my friend's cousin hadn't been about sparks flying. It had been about finding a steady, quiet light in the darkness, a reminder that connection can happen in the most unexpected ways, that understanding can be found in shared silence, and that sometimes a simple detour can show you a view you desperately needed to see. I went to bed that night feeling less alone, carrying the quiet peace of the overlook within me, a gentle reassurance that even after the sharp turns, the road ahead might still hold unexpected beauty. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to start looking up.